Welcome to the final episode of the podcast series Musical Metamorphoses, mini home concerts with a pinch of history. My name is Aleksandra Bobrowska. I'm a pianist, and today I invite you to my virtual music salon where we will talk a bit about the music of Frédéric Chopin, my dear compatriot. So please sit back and relax, and let's get started. The first piece to be heard on our podcast today is Lento con gran espressione, commonly known simply as the Nocturne in C-sharp minor. It was written in Vienna in 1830, but got published much later in 1875, so many years after Chopin had passed away. Immediately after its composition, though, it was dedicated and sent directly to Ludwika Jędrzejewiczowa. She was Chopin's sister. She was the eldest one because he also had two younger siblings, two younger sisters, Isabella and Emilia. But today I would love to speak about the eldest one in particular, because Ludwika was a particularly interesting figure in all the Chopin's family. So, what can we say about her? First of all, she supported his learning to write and to read when he was a child, and likely she also helped him to learn how to play the piano. The siblings too shared a teacher, Wojciech Żywny. Ludwika was the only member of the entire Chopin family to visit Frédéric in Paris, and she did it twice. Also, her correspondence with her brother remains a source of much information about the composer's life. She was also present at Chopin's death and cared for him for several weeks before his passing. After Frédéric's death, Ludwika brought some of his correspondence to Warsaw, likely a lock of his hair also, and most importantly, his heart. And by the way, his heart is now buried in the Holy Cross Church at Krakowskie Przedmieście in Warsaw. So if you visit, this place is a must-see. It was to Ludwika who James Sterling, a British student of Frédéric Chopin, gave a Pleyel piano, which she won at an auction after the composer's death. Right now, the instrument is a part of the collection of the Chopin Museum in Warsaw. It's a must-see place if you visit Poland at some point. Her closeness with her brother resulted in the breakdown of her marriage, unfortunately. Her husband, Józef Jędrzejewicz, deeply disliked Frédéric and the entire Chopin family. He neglected to maintain good relations with his in-laws and told many unflattering stories about Ludwika's brother. This conflict between the couple was widely known and, unfortunately, almost public, which must have been particularly difficult for Ludwika. What else do we actually know about Ludwika? Because so far we've been talking about her only in the context of the relationship with Frédéric Chopin, the one who was the most famous in the family. But what we know about herself as a woman? We know that for sure she composed. Frédéric, again, himself, wrote in 1825 in a letter to his friend that Ludwika created a perfect mazur, the kind of which Warsaw had never danced. Unfortunately, as it was a case for many female composers at the time, none of her compositions have survived. Also, she actively participated in Warsaw's cultural life and engaged in charity work. She wrote for the Warsaw Press and wrote many novels, including a book for tadam tadam, craftsman. I'm sure you never thought you would hear that about Chopin's sister. Well, actually, the book that she created for the craftsman, it was absolutely one of the most of the books that was the most in demand at that time. She co-wrote it with her sister Isabella, but it was actually published 5 times. They needed to reprint the book, and it even happened after Ludwika's death that people were still asking for this book, and they needed to reprint another edition of it. Also, she translated the life of Saint Veronica from Italian. So, as you understand, she was therefore a true Renaissance woman. She died in Warsaw of a cholera epidemic in 1855. So it was 6 years after her brother's death and 2 years after her husband's death. Her passing resonated through Warsaw cycles as she was widely known and beloved by many people. After her passing, all the matters related to the care of Chopin's legacy were taken over by her sister Isabella, who lived the longest of the Chopin family until 1881. As you can see, she was a truly extraordinary figure who played an exceptionally important role in the life not only of Frederick himself, but also of the entire family and local community. It is no wonder, then, that the composer, in creating a work dedicated to his sister, seems to speak in sounds of a whole range of worries and joys and other emotions that we can only think of, that only those truly close to him could really understand. The second composition on today's list is dedicated to an equally exceptional woman, Delfina Potocka. She was a student of Chopin who also taught her sisters Ludmila and Natalia. She was a woman of extraordinary vocal talent. Also, supposedly as a composer, although none of her compositions survived. She was an amateur painter as well, and she was known for her remarkable beauty and an extraordinary manner. Her marriage to Mieczysław Potocki fell apart due to the abusive nature of the relationship. Afterwards, she traveled extensively throughout Europe, and during one of her trips, she met Zygmunt Krasiński, a Polish writer, with whom she embarked on an affair. Krasiński was already married at that time, and unfortunately, it didn't work well for her reputation. Throughout Chopin's stay in Paris, she maintained a close friendship with him, and it was she who sang to Chopin on his deathbed. Delacroix, a painter, he made this very famous painting, a portrait of Chopin, and a friend of his, a very close friend of Frederick, he wrote in his diary in 1849, after hearing Delfina singing, that I have rarely encountered anything so perfect. Chopin dedicated the concerto in F minor and the waltz in D flat major to her. And actually the waltz is going to be our second piece for the mini concert today. Frederick also included the prelude in A major, opus 28, and the song The Melody, with lyrics by Krasiński in her album. In a moment, you will hear Lento con grande espressione and the waltz in D flat major, opus 64, number 2, very often called the Minute Waltz. Before I sit down at the instrument, however, I would just like to remind you that the current series of episodes of Musical Metamorphoses is made possible thanks to the support of a grant from the National Reconstruction Plan for Culture, which was financed by the European Union. I also do encourage you to visit the excellent website of the Frederick Chopin National Institute, which is not only a beautifully designed and transparent information portal, but also contains a wealth of interesting information, which, crucially, comes from verified, reliable sources. The Institute's website was exceptionally helpful in preparing today's podcast. Let the music play. See you in future podcast season coming very soon.